This is my Epson ActionNote 4SLC33. This is a laptop from 1993 that's powered by a Cyrix CX486 SLC processor running at 33 MHz, and it has 4 megabytes of RAM. Now normally I run MS-DOS and Windows 3.1 on this computer. That's what it originally shipped with and what it was designed to use. But I decided to challenge myself. I decided to see how Windows 95 and Windows 98 would run on this computer. And actually, when I first got this laptop in 2015, before I even fixed the keyboard issue it had, I tried Windows 95 on it. It was actually the first operating system I ever put on it when I first got it, just as a check to see how all the hardware worked and everything. But then just recently, I decided, just for fun, to see how Windows 98 would run on this thing. Now, Windows 95 on a computer with only 4 megs of RAM is at best going to be sluggish. 4 megabytes is the bare minimum of RAM for Windows 95, and Windows 98 would be absolutely unsuitable for this. Windows 98 declares a bare minimum of, I think, 24 megs of RAM, and this thing with only 4 megs, Windows 98 was guaranteed to be absolutely unusable on this computer if it installed and ran at all. Well, I've installed both of them. And in this video, I'm going to just briefly boot them up, maybe run a program or two, and show you how Windows 95 and Windows 98 run on a laptop like this. Now, when I installed Windows 95, back when I first got this computer in 2015, I made a video back then, so the clip I'm going to show you of running Windows 95 on this was recorded in 2015. And after that, we'll come back to the present day, where I currently have Windows 98 installed on this on another hard drive which I put in it, and we'll see how that runs. So, to begin, here's the clip I recorded in 2015 showing how Windows 95 runs on this laptop. So, let's turn it on and see how it works. And there it goes. Let me adjust the contrast for you here. There, it looks pretty good. And let me tell you, with 4 megabytes of RAM, Windows 95 runs like dog crap on this thing. I'm not even kidding. It's so slow. Oh crap, I forgot to plug in a mouse. It'll prompt me for a mouse once it's finished starting. And I've also installed Microsoft Office 95. So, we'll get to see how that works too. Now, yes, it prompts me for a mouse, so I will dig one up. Well, despite it saying that I can plug in a serial mouse right now, it doesn't respond when I plug in this very nice Microsoft serial mouse, which I saved from recycling. So, I guess I'll just let it boot. And I'll shut it down, and I'll get my optical PS2 mouse, and then we'll continue from there. And of course, this machine has no sound capability, no networking, although it does have a modem, no optical drive, just a floppy, but it does have parallel and serial ports, so you gotta work with the floppy and the parallel and serial ports to get data to and from this machine. I installed Windows 95 purely through floppy. I procured the floppy disk version of Windows 95, came on 14 floppies, and holy cow, it took over 2 hours to install Windows 95 through floppy. That's insane. It takes like 15 minutes with a CD-ROM. I couldn't believe how long it took. So here it is. I'm going to shut down, and I will plug in a PS2 mouse and we will come back. Alright, we're restarted, and for a mouse I'm using this awesome Mitsumi PS2 optical mouse that I also saved from recycling. So we are active, and let's just take a look at the properties here. This thing, as you can see, this thing's pretty darn sluggish. So it's the original version of Windows 95, very first version. So it doesn't have Internet Explorer. It doesn't have any of. It doesn't have the USB support or any of that extra stuff. And computer, pretty simple. 8486, 4 megabytes of RAM. Simple as that. And you know, if I had the ability to put more RAM in this thing, Windows 95 would probably be usable, but that's impossible because this thing uses proprietary RAM. So you can either be extremely patient with Windows 95 or stick with Windows 3.1. So, well, 160 megabyte hard drive, I guess. I said 180. I thought that was the unformatted capacity, but maybe it's 170. I don't remember. But with Windows 95 and Microsoft Office 95, a typical installation, we're using about 98 megabytes. Windows itself used about, I think, around 50 megabytes. We'll open Control Panel. And some things, you know, they're not too sluggish, but most things are. And we'll go to Display. And go to Screensaver. Windows 95 only comes with one screensaver, I guess, the Flying Windows. I thought it came with quite a few. I know Windows 3.1 did. Maybe Windows 95 didn't install them, although it should have. I told it to. Then again, maybe the rest require an actual video card. So here's a screensaver. It's a bit sluggish at first, but then it speeds up. I almost said it's doing pretty good, but then it lost its breath. There it goes. Windows 95 does not discover the Cyrus video card in this thing out of the box. Not that it really matters, because it's just it only supports 16 colors anyway, so you know, it just detects it as a standard VGA adapter, but that's pretty much all you need on this machine. So there you go, 16 color, or 16 grays in this case. So I'll close that, and actually I'll show you if we go into the properties page again. And we go to performance, Windows will actually complain. Let me turn the contrast up a bit. It actually complains. It says, suggestion, you may want to install more RAM. You know, just a friendly reminder. Although oddly enough, even when I have Office running, system resources rarely dips below 90%. Maybe system resources is a different thing than what I'm thinking of. I don't know. Yeah, if we click details, I believe it opens up a help page. Suggestion, you may want to install more RAM. You have less than 8 megabytes of RAM. Yeah, 8 megabytes is about what I would consider the bare minimum you should have for Windows 95. If you have any less than that and you can't upgrade, put Windows 3.1 on it. So I'll open up Microsoft Word here. I considered being more daring and seeing if I could get Office 97 or even Office 2000 on this, but I don't know if it's supposed to draw the splash screen that slowly, or if that's a limitation of the video card. I don't know. It might be worth finding the Cyrus driver for Windows 95 and installing it on this, because maybe it would give some hardware 2D acceleration. I don't know. But there. And I'll make the font a bit bigger. There we go. And I think if I don't know how to make a word art image on Word 95, but I can go to insert picture. And wait a couple of years. Yeah, I mean, Surely you guys will agree, Windows 95 is not the thing for this computer. It works, but it's really not suited. Ah, an anchor. That's maritime-like. And now we wait a couple more years. And there you go. Alright, so we're back to the present day now. So I've put another hard drive in this, the hard drive that I usually use in this with DOS and Windows 3.1, that's safely put aside. And I've installed Windows 98 on this. Now, because this laptop only has a floppy drive, I used the rare floppy disk version of Windows 98. You can download the floppy disk version of Windows 98 on winworldpc.com. And I actually have a video I filmed showing, because a lot of people don't know that Windows 98 ever came in a floppy disk version. I have a video where I installed the floppy disk version of Windows 98 on a real computer in real time, and you can watch that via a card that's popping up in the corner of this video now. So I actually made a real-time video showing how long it took to install Windows 98 via floppy disk. So I did the same with this computer, and let me tell you, Windows 98 is absolutely unusable on this computer. It would already be probably unusable just by the fact that it's a 33 megahertz machine, a 486 SLC, which is basically just a glorified 386 SX. So no math coprocessor, and the 4 megs of RAM is just the icing on the horrible cake. Windows 98 runs just like absolute trash on this. It's legitimately unusable. So, light off, we'll turn this on, and I'll show you how it works. Oh, I should say though, I gotta press F8 to get to the boot menu first, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so here's the caveat. Windows 90, because of how little RAM this thing has, Windows 98 will not start in normal mode, so it actually is completely unusable. It will boot into safe mode, however. So I'll boot into safe mode here, and you'll get to see at least Windows 98 booting into safe mode. So yeah, 4 megs of RAM is absolutely too little. It can't load all the base operating system files into memory. It just can't do it. But we'll boot into safe mode here, and the, well, here's the thing. So in the part where I installed Windows 95 on this, I was flabbergasted at how it took 2 hours to install Windows 95 on this thing. Well, Windows 98 took about 6 hours to install on this, so I had no idea what a long installation was when I thought 2 hours to install Windows 95 was long. But yeah, Windows 98 took 6 hours to install, and might actually go a little bit faster this time. And also, I couldn't boot from the Windows 98 setup. It would get a little ways into setup and then complain that it couldn't copy a certain file because it ran out of memory. So what I did was, I had an idea. I installed Windows 95 on this, and then I ran the Windows 98 setup over top of Windows 95, because I figured that the availability of virtual memory in Windows 95 would help the installation be successful, and I turned out to be correct. It was successful installing Windows 98, but upon the first boot, because it has only 4 megs of RAM, I found that it wasn't able to boot normally. And because it's not able to boot normally, technically the installation was never able to finish. This error message right here says that it can't detect and install your devices while running in safe mode. So the installation technically hasn't finished yet. It hasn't gone through the second phase where it detects all the hardware and prepares the start menu and all that stuff. So setup has never actually been able to finish, but the operating system will boot and is mostly usable in safe mode. 2 safe modes limitations, of course. But I'll press enter here. I forgot to connect a mouse, but that isn't really going to be important because there's going to be literally nothing that we can do on here. Now, to this thing's advantage for Windows 98, The hard drive I'm running in this is a quite fast hard drive. It's a hard drive from 1998. It's a 4 gig hard drive. So it's a much faster hard drive than the original 170 megabyte drive that this laptop originally came with. So it'll be able to load things faster, and if I had Windows 95 on this, maybe Windows 95 would be tolerable with a faster hard drive. So yeah, this is actually going way faster than the first boot. The first boot for this thing took 45 minutes, if you can believe it. The first boot into safe mode, 45 minutes. So I thought I was going to have to sit here filming and then do a speed up in editing, but we're booting much quicker this time. So there it's loading the active desktop bar, the channel bar. Right, so without a mouse I can't highlight the My Computer to bring up the properties box, but I think I should be able to do that through Control Panel. So it's actually running almost okay, which it definitely wasn't doing last time. Alright, after 3 or 4 minutes, Control Panel loaded. Let's see if I can get to System here. And now we wait for that to open. It didn't take too long, only 15 seconds or so. Microsoft Windows 98, the original version, 4.10.1998. Computer, Cyrix Instead, CX486 SLC or DLC. We have an SLC, 4 megs of RAM. So there you go. And yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to show of this, because it's absolutely unusable otherwise. Actually, there is one more thing I'll show. I'll show just for kicks how much hard drive space this uses. Using 170 megabytes of space. So it actually wouldn't have fit on the original 170 megabyte hard drive that this computer shipped with. And although this is a 4 gigabyte hard drive, our capacity is only 502 megabytes, because that's the maximum size that the BIOS in this computer can acknowledge. It can't address farther than the first 500 megabytes of a hard drive, because it doesn't support logical block addressing. And actually, Windows 98 complains about that when you run Windows 98 setup from DOS. I don't think it complained when you run from Windows, but when you run Windows 98 setup from DOS on a computer that's old enough that it doesn't have logical block addressing for the hard disk, Windows produces an error. It's like, your computer is acting like it doesn't have logical block addressing. You may want to quit setup and check your BIOS to make sure your hard drive is set up correctly. So Windows 98 didn't even expect to be installed on a computer this old. Well, there you go. Anyway, that's enough waiting around for this. I'm just going to power this off. I don't need to shut it down properly, because I'm taking that hard drive out and putting the original with DOS and Windows 3.1 back in. So there is a look at Windows 95 and 98 running on the Epson ActionNote 4SLC33 laptop from 1993. As I said, Windows 98 is absolutely unusable. Windows 95 is at best tolerable if you have a lot of patience, but I still wouldn't recommend it. If this thing had 8 megs of RAM, I would say go ahead and run it if you really want to. But this computer, as it's currently configured, I wouldn't recommend Windows 95 either, unless you really needed it or wanted it on a computer like this. I would say just stick with DOS and Windows 3.1. But there you go anyway. Neat little experiment, just for fun. Just doing stuff because we can and seeing how it works. So, hope you found this interesting. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.